audience I speak to. And I'm given a very funny title or thing to speak about, this about dangerous ideas. I've been thinking about what I have to say about dangerous ideas. And then when I came here, I realized that this place is called Publica. Now that would be a very dangerous idea if you put a re before Publica. So I thought I would be talking about making Malaysia a republic. That also is very dangerous. I know things are always recorded nowadays, so this can be used against me in the near future. So I decided after all, although I thought at first that we should use a little bit of violence in order to achieve our objective to become a republic, but since it's going to be recorded, I will not say it. But you may realize that I have already said it. So I thought and thought again about what I should talk about that is dangerous. Well, I've gone through many dangerous periods in my life. Once I talk about something, about parts of the body which sometimes die before you die, and that became viral. Everybody seems to know which part. So, what is dangerous really? Well, in my career, I think one of the most dangerous moments was when I decided to go against common sense, to go against what is called accepted wisdom. That was when I had to face this problem of the currency depreciating. Today the currency is also depreciating, but it doesn't seem so dangerous. It was dangerous in my time because people were deliberately depreciating the value of the Malaysian currency. And after one whole year of having a lot of dangerous ideas, I came upon this idea that perhaps we should fix the exchange rate. And of course, this was regarded as dangerous thinking because it differs from the thinking of the whole world at that time. Everybody said that the reason why the Malaysian currency was depreciating was because we didn't know how to manage our finances, particularly the Prime Minister, whose knowledge about finance and economics could be written on the back of a postage stamp. Fortunately, we no longer use postage stamp. We email everything. I don't know when you email, do you attach postage stamps or not? I don't know how to email. I heard about it, but this is this strange thing called email. And I'm told that if you email, you don't, not only will the person you email to will get the message, lots of other people on the edge of things would also get the email. And of course, these people are unscrupulous. They sometimes publish your secret email. And so it begins something dangerous results from that. But in those days, there were no postage stamps. So when people were told that my knowledge of finance could be written on a postage, back of a postage stamp, young people asked, what is a postage stamp? They had never seen it before. So I believe that they thought a postage stamp was big enough to carry all the knowledge that I had about finance, being what I was, a prime minister. Not always a very intelligent person, but okay. I was prime minister then. The best thing about being a politician is that you require no qualification. It's true. I find, to become an office boy, you have to pass SPM. But to become a politician, what is the qualification that you should have? Nothing. I wouldn't say idiot, but anybody can become a politician. So this is the easiest job actually that is to be found in this country. No qualification whatsoever. I must tell you that I qualified in the art and science of frying bananas, banana fritters. That's what I did during the war. I used to fry bananas and sell. And being qualified as a banana fritters fryer, I was regarded as qualified to become prime minister. So you see, that is the job you should go after. No qualification at all. But to come back to my subject about this dangerous idea of going against conventional wisdom, that when people are selling your currency and depreciating it, and you become poor, you must not do anything except blame yourself, because you have no knowledge about finance. So I was blaming myself for 1 year, and I found that it was not very productive. And so I had this dangerous idea of fixing the exchange rate of the Malaysian ringgit. And I thought that if I fix the exchange rate, then people cannot devalue the currency or revalue the currency. I had to read books on banking. I had to ask bankers about what banking is all about. And one of the things I discovered at that time was that bankers lend you money which they do not have. Now that is another job that you should go after. It's true, it's absolutely true. Because when I read about, mergers and acquisition, and there were companies paying billions of dollars. I said, could this company have billions of dollars to buy this other company? I thought, it's fantastic if they have this. But later on I discovered they borrowed the money. Then I asked myself, do the banks have so much money? Later on, when we had the crisis, I found out that the bank was lending you money which they did not have. And the best part of it, if you lend money, that money that you lend become your assets. I mean, if everybody can do that, we all can be rich. We go around lending money to everybody, and the money you lend becomes asset. So that is banking. So I learned about banking. And then I realized that these people who were selling the Malaysian currency did not have any Malaysian currency, did not have any ringgit at all. Now how could they sell if they don't have? I thought that they were carrying cash, 100 million cash around and depositing it with the buyer, and the buyer then selling it, carrying a huge bundles of cash. So, being ignorant, I told the customs people, when people leave this country, check their bags to see whether they're taking out our money. Because they are taking out our money and we are becoming poor. and the currency begins to depreciate. And so the customs people, being very your obedient servant, they checked on all the bags, and they told me, no, there was no money taken out of this country. I say, if they don't take out the money from this country, how are they going to sell this money? They must have taken it out. But later on, when I read the book on banking, it is something that the banks are allowed to do. They are allowed to create money. You need banks to create money. Otherwise, how can there be billions and trillions of dollars? The government cannot print that amount of money. Obviously, the banks were creating money and lending money, and the currency traders were borrowing money which does not exist in the bank. They borrow money from the bank, and the bank lent them huge sums of money. They call it leverage. In other words, you leverage things that is below here, nothing, and you leverage, it becomes higher. So they lent this non-existent money to the currency trader, and the currency trader also did not receive any money. It's just that it's written in the books that they have borrowed so much money. And then they sell the money which did not exist to their friends, fellow currency traders. Every time they sell, the value of the ringgit goes down. So that was how they were fiddling around with the value of our currency without any money at all. These currency traders do not handle any money. They are the cause of the present recession in the whole world, because every day currency traders trade to the value of $4 trillion. $4 trillion is the total sum of money that they've been trading among themselves. It's equal to the total production of Germany for one whole year, but the currency traders do that in only one day. But the effect of their trading is to lower the value of the currency if they sell and sell and sell. But if they buy and buy and buy, there's nothing. When they buy, there is no money at all. All that happens when they buy is that when A sells to B, then the account of the money belonging to A is transferred to B, all in the bank's book. Nothing at all, no currency involved, no cash involved. But the effect of their transfer or their selling of our currency is to reduce the value of the currency. And of course, if they buy repeatedly, like all things, when it is a buyer's market, then of course the value appreciates. So that was what they were doing. I was shocked when I learned about this. And at one time I thought that it's another dangerous idea. I thought I should cease becoming Prime Minister and go into currency trading. But fortunately, I did not make that a reality. I continued to be a Prime Minister. And as Prime Minister, I decided that since the buying and the selling is a process of transferring the account in A's account to B's account, I said that, well, we'll stop that. So we told the central bank, please tell the banks that if anybody sells money, that is not valid. We don't accept that the money has been sold. If you sold $100 million, A sold to B, but the money will remain with A and not go to B. We don't recognize the transaction. And because of that, they couldn't sell anymore. And suddenly the currency became very stable. We fixed that at the rate of, originally it was at 2.50 ringgit to 1 US dollar, very strong. But after the currency traders got to work, the value went down almost to 5 ringgit to 1 dollar, almost half the value, which means that we became poorer by that amount. Our wealth becomes half the value in terms of foreign currency. But since we had the power to fix the rate, we could make ourselves very, very rich simply by fixing the exchange rate, say, to 1 Malaysian ringgit to 1 US dollar. Suddenly we would become very rich. Unfortunately, if we did that, what happens is that the cost of our products goes up and we cannot export, we cannot compete with our neighbors. So we were forced to accept a much lower value for the ringgit, and we decided to fix it at 3.8 ringgit to 1 US dollar. And that stops the currency trading and the economy recovered. But of course, this is not conventional wisdom, not the right thing to do. I was called the pariah. I mean, we say pariah, but they say paria. You see, something to do with Perry or something like that. But anyway, for a long time, our currency was very stable, 3.8 to 1 US dollar. You bring in US dollar, you can exchange 1 US dollar for 3.8 Malaysian ringgit. If you want US dollar, you can buy US dollar at 3.8 for 1 US dollar. So if you have to purchase anything from outside the country, you can obtain the US dollar in exchange for your ringgit. If you earn US dollar, you bring in and you have Malaysian ringgit at 3.8. It was very nice, very stable. Business people were very, very happy. Many people were about to be bankrupt by the currency crisis then. They were saved, and that explains why in 1999, when we had elections, I still won with a 2/3 majority, even though the Malays turned me down because of Anwar's black eye. Well, it's true, it's absolutely true. I lost 300,000 votes because of his black eye. I think if you are going to go into politics, make sure you have a black eye, then people will be sympathetic towards you. So, but then of course, I decided that I should step down, and now once you step down and you don't become Prime Minister, I realize you don't have as much authority as you used to have. Very uncomfortable. Before you could say, do this, and it's done. You know? But now I have to sit on the sideline watching them, and sometimes they do great things, and I clap. At other times, they don't do such great things, and I gnash my teeth because I couldn't do anything else. So I find that they decided that, well, we shouldn't fix the exchange rate. We should let it float. You know, when they say you let something float, normally it rises with the water. If the water goes up, what is floating goes up. But here the water is going up, but the currency is going down. I don't know why. Maybe the currency is too heavy. So now today we are back to square one. Our ringgit is now 3.8 to the US dollar. Such a waste of time. You could have fixed that a long time ago and not allow it to go up and down. It's very distressing for business people because they prepare their budget at the beginning of the year or their financial year, and then they find at the end of the financial year, their money is not there. So I think it's a good thing if we fix the exchange rate. Of course, we can fix at any value that you like, and that gives the Prime Minister, great power. He can make you rich, he can make you poor. You don't behave yourself, I devalue your currency. You see, such power, I think, should be with prime ministers as a whole, all over the world. You know, these things called democracy is a very dangerous idea. Isn't it? Look at the stability during Mubarak's time. Egypt was very stable. Of course, a few people had to spend time as government guests in special places, but it was very stable. But now look at what's happening. After democracy, they had an election. You know, when you overthrow a dictator, you always imagine that I am going to take his place. So they all joined together and overthrew the dictator, and then they fight each other because they found that there is only one dictator. There is only one prime minister. And so whoever gets to be prime minister must be cheating. So we should demonstrate and bring him down. And then you go up and become the prime minister. Other people demonstrate and bring you down. So that's democracy. It's a great game of musical chairs. You see, in Malay they say, ketik-ketik semut, siapa sakit lari naik. You see, so you keep on trying to move up and people pull you down. This reminds me of a political story about a man who sold crabs near the beach. Where there is a wall, he was selling crabs there, and the crabs was climbing up the wall, and if it goes over the wall, it goes back into the sea. So one very concerned customer told this man, look, your crab is climbing up the wall, and if you don't you don't do something, this crab is going to be lost to go back to the sea. I said, no fear. You know, the habit of crabs is that when one of them goes up, the other will pull him down. So he will never reach the top. So in human society also, sometimes we behave like crabs. If you see somebody going up, you pull him down. That is why some democracies do not work. One of my ideas is that people should learn about democracy, and they invited me to Egypt twice to tell them about democracies. And I told them the essential thing about democracy is that if you lose, accept that you have lost. But of course, they don't accept that. If you lose, it must be because the other chap is cheating. And when you go up, the other chap will say you are cheating. So in the end, you see, you don't have a good democracy, you get anarchy instead. And then you go back to having the old system which you were familiar with, that is some military government of some sort. So I think you have some idea of the kind of dangerous ideas I entertained when I was Prime Minister. So I think I've said enough. And do I have to answer question?